Speak like a leader. The art of powerful communication. Introduction. Leadership begins long before a person receives a title, manages a team, or makes an important decision. It begins in the way a person communicates, in the impression their words create, in the trust their voice inspires, and in the clarity with which they can guide others through uncertainty. The greatest leaders in history were not defined by their physical strength, their wealth, or even their intelligence, but by the power of their communication. Their ability to speak with purpose, clarity, confidence, and emotion shaped minds, moved nations, and awakened possibilities in the hearts of people who heard them. Throughout time, from ancient civilizations to modern societies, one truth has remained constant. Humans naturally look for a voice to trust, follow, and believe in. And that voice belongs to the leader. To speak like a leader is not simply to speak loudly or forcefully. True leadership communication is a subtle and profound art. It is the ability to connect with people's emotions while appealing to their logic, to transmit calm in moments of fear, to bring clarity when confusion dominates, and to offer direction when people feel lost. The leader's voice is not only a tool for sharing information, it is a bridge between minds, a signal of stability, and a source of motivation. When a leader speaks, others should feel grounded, guided, and renewed with purpose. This book begins with the belief that communication is not an accessory to leadership. It is its foundation. Without communication, leadership collapses. But with the right communication, leadership becomes transformative.
In every environment, business, education, community, family, or personal life, people naturally trust and follow the individuals who can communicate effectively. Clear communication creates confidence, while poor communication creates doubt. A leader who fails to express themselves clearly leaves room for fear, hesitation, and misunderstanding. Employees become uncertain, families become confused, communities become anxious. But when a leader speaks with clarity and intention, people feel safer and more capable. Because strong communication is not merely about words, it carries emotional influence. A few well-chosen sentences can change someone's direction, their mindset, their actions, and even their life. For this reason alone, learning how to speak like a leader is not a luxury for a chosen few. It is a skill that everyone needs, because every human being leads in some way, whether they lead a team, a family, a project, a classroom, or even their own personal goals. Yet despite its importance, powerful communication is often misunderstood. Many believe that talking like a leader requires a naturally strong voice, a charismatic personality, or years of experience. But the truth is simpler and more liberating. Leadership communication is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned, improved, and mastered with awareness and practice. It begins with understanding yourself, your voice, your message, and the impact your words create. It grows through deliberate effort, developing clarity, confidence, emotional intelligence, and presence. And it becomes stronger when your communication aligns with your values, your vision, and your purpose.
The first transformation that occurs when you learn to speak like a leader is internal. You begin to see communication not as something you do, but as something you are. Your voice becomes an extension of your identity. The way you express yourself begins to reflect your strengths, your confidence, and your calmness. You stop speaking to impress others and start speaking to influence, guide, and elevate them. You become more intentional with your words, more aware of your tone, more thoughtful with your timing, and more selective with your expressions. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop filling silence with unnecessary talk and start using silence as a tool. You stop doubting your voice and begin to trust it. This shift is profound because once you trust your voice, others will naturally trust it too. Speaking like a leader also requires understanding emotion. People do not follow information, they follow inspiration. They follow clarity. They follow confidence. And they follow people who make them feel understood. Logic speaks to the mind, but communication that moves people speaks to both the mind and the heart. Leadership communication is the art of balancing the two, giving people reasons to believe while giving them feelings that motivate. A leader must know how to bring calmness to a tense situation, hope to a difficult moment, structure to chaos, motivation to hesitation, and unity to disagreement. This emotional influence is not manipulation, it is guidance. It is the ability to help others find strength, direction, and meaning when they need it most.
As you read this book, you will realize that leadership communication is not about perfection. Leaders are not perfect speakers. They make mistakes, forget words, lose their train of thought, and experience fear like anyone else. What separates great leaders is not lack of fear, but mastery of it. They speak, even when their voice shakes. They communicate, even when the message is difficult. They remain composed, even when the moment is heavy. They understand that their role is not to sound flawless, but to sound grounded, clear, and purposeful. People don't remember perfect speeches. They remember authentic ones. They remember words that came from clarity, courage, and honesty. They remember voices that carried conviction, meaning, and understanding. Leadership communication is therefore not a performance. It is a responsibility. The modern world has made communication even more essential. With social media, global connections, and rapid information flow, every word spreads fast and has the power to influence thousands. A leader today must be more aware, more intentional, and more emotionally intelligent than ever before. The ability to speak clearly in a noisy world is a superpower. The ability to calm emotions in an anxious world is leadership. The ability to communicate vision in a directionless world is impact. People are hungry for voices they can trust, voices that bring meaning, voices that inspire action, and voices that offer stability. If you can develop such a voice, your influence will extend far beyond your immediate environment. This book is not written to teach you how to imitate famous leaders. You do not need to become like them. You need to become the strongest version of yourself. Every leader has a unique voice, and your journey is to discover your own, strengthen it, refine it, and use it with purpose. Whether your natural tone is soft or strong, whether your personality is outgoing or calm, whether your communication style is emotional or analytical, you can become a powerful communicator. Leadership is not about changing who you are. It is about bringing out the qualities that already exist within you and learning to express them with strength, clarity, and presence. The following chapters will take you through a deep exploration of the elements that shape leadership communication: confidence, tone, energy, clarity, emotional intelligence, storytelling, vision, body language, and presence. Each chapter will show you how leaders think, how they speak, how they influence, and how they guide others through their words. You will learn how to sound confident even when you're uncertain, how to speak with calm authority, how to motivate without pressure, how to resolve conflict with words, how to make people feel included, and how to communicate in ways that build trust and inspire action. You will learn not only what to say, but how to say it, when to say it, and why it matters. By the end of this book, you will understand that speaking like a leader is not about style, but about impact. It is not about demonstrating power, but about creating connection. It is not about dominating conversations, but about elevating them. It is not about being heard the most, but about being understood the best. And it is not about controlling people, but about guiding them towards something meaningful. Leadership is influence, and communication is the path through which that influence travels. You now stand at the beginning of a journey that will not only change the way others see you, but also the way you see yourself. When your communication becomes stronger, your opportunities expand. Your relationships improve. Your confidence grows. Your presence deepens. And your ability to lead in any situation, in any environment, with any group becomes natural and powerful. This book invites you to step into that version of yourself, the version who speaks with intention, the version who inspires trust, the version who communicates vision, the version who leads with words that matter. Welcome to Speak Like a Leader, the art of powerful communication. Your voice is about to change. Your life will follow.
Chapter 1. The Power of a Leadership Voice. A leader's voice is not merely a sound carried through the air. It is a force capable of shaping thoughts, directing emotions, and transforming entire environments. When people search for a leader to follow, they do not look first at physical appearance, professional titles, or academic qualifications. They look for someone whose voice communicates certainty, calmness, clarity, and purpose. The voice becomes a symbol of stability, a message of direction, a signal of strength, and a promise of guidance. Leadership begins in the mind, but it becomes visible, believable, and influential through communication. In this first chapter, we explore how the leadership voice develops, why it holds such power over human behavior, and how it becomes the foundation upon which all impactful leadership is built. Human beings have always been drawn to voices that shine in moments of darkness. In times of confusion, people seek clarity. In times of fear, they seek reassurance. In times of doubt, they seek confidence. And because the voice is the most direct channel between one person's mind and another's, it becomes the natural path through which leadership flows. Long before writing, technology, meetings, or strategic plans existed, human groups relied on spoken words to coordinate, survive, and progress. The person whose voice remained steady during chaos naturally became the guide. This ancient instinct still exists in the modern world. When a crisis strikes, people subconsciously listen for the calmest, clearest voice. When a team is unsure of its direction, it listens for the person who speaks with conviction. When a family faces difficulty, it listens for the one who speaks with steadiness. Leadership is not given, it is recognized, and it is recognized through communication.
The power of a leadership voice does not come from volume or force. Loud voices may create noise, but only meaningful voices create influence. Strength in communication is not measured by how much someone speaks, but by the impact created when they do. The leader's voice carries weight because it is intentional, grounded, and connected to a larger purpose. It is not used to dominate others, but to guide them. People feel this difference instinctively. They can tell when someone speaks from insecurity, and they can immediately tell when someone speaks from confidence. They can sense the difference between a voice that seeks attention and a voice that offers direction. The leadership voice is shaped not by the desire to impress, but by the desire to bring clarity and progress. One of the most profound characteristics of a leadership voice is its ability to turn complex ideas into understandable meaning. Many people can think clearly, but few can express clearly. The leader is the person who can take what is confusing, break it down in their mind, and articulate it in a way that others understand, believe, and remember. This ability creates trust because people want to follow someone who understands where they're going and can explain it with simplicity. Confusion creates hesitation, but clarity creates action. When a leader speaks clearly, people move with confidence because they feel they are being led by someone who knows the landscape ahead.
Another dimension of the leadership voice is emotional alignment. People do not only listen with their ears, they listen with their feelings. A leader must therefore speak in a way that resonates emotionally, not by manipulating emotions, but by understanding them. When speaking to someone who feels afraid, a leader's tone must bring calmness. When speaking to someone who feels discouraged, the leader's voice must bring hope. When speaking to someone who feels lost, the leader's message must bring direction. Words carry emotional energy, and leaders learn to master this energy. They do not speak carelessly or reactively. They speak with sensitivity, awareness, and intentional impact. This emotional intelligence allows their voice to reach not only the listener's mind, but also their heart. A leadership voice also reflects inner strength. People can hear confidence not only in what you say, but in how you say it. The leader's tone is relaxed yet firm, steady yet flexible, powerful yet gentle. It is the sound of someone who believes in their message, trusts their abilities, and remains calm under pressure. This tone is not natural for everyone, but it can be developed through self-awareness and practice. When a person understands their emotions, controls their fears, and believes in their purpose, their voice naturally becomes stronger. It carries a quality that makes others trust them even before they fully understand the message. Confidence is audible. Calmness is audible. Certainty is audible. And because people trust what they feel more than what they think, the emotional quality of a leader's voice often guides their influence more than the content of their words.
Yet the leadership voice is not defined only by speech. It is equally defined by silence. A leader who talks constantly weakens their presence, while a leader who knows when to pause strengthens it. Silence, when used intentionally, adds weight to words, allows listeners to process ideas, and creates a rhythm that draws attention. Great communicators understand that silence is not an absence of speech, but a tool of emphasis. It is in the pauses that meaning settles, emotion deepens, and the listener begins to feel the importance of the message. Leaders use silence to control the flow of communication, to maintain calmness, and to show that they are not rushed or reactive. Silence shows confidence because only those who feel secure allow space before reacting. This emotional steadiness builds trust and authority. Another important aspect of the leadership voice is consistency. People may be impressed once by a powerful speech, but they trust a leader whose communication remains stable over time. Consistency turns respect into loyalty. When a leader's voice carries the same strength in moments of success and moments of difficulty, people feel secure. They know what to expect. They feel grounded. Consistency does not mean repeating the same words. It means maintaining the same level of clarity, honesty, and confidence. A leader who communicates with integrity gains a reputation that becomes more powerful than any speech. People follow leaders not because of dramatic moments, but because of consistent reliability.
The leadership voice is also shaped by listening. Many people believe leadership communication is about speaking well, but the truth is deeper. Leaders listen more than they speak. Listening shows respect, builds understanding, and reveals the emotions and needs of others. A person who listens carefully speaks more effectively because their words respond to real concerns instead of assumptions. Listening gives the leader insight into what people feel, what they fear, what they want, and what they believe. When people feel heard, they become more open to guidance, collaboration, and motivation. A leader who listens creates connection, and connection creates influence. When the time comes to speak, their message carries more weight because it comes from understanding, not from distance. A leadership voice must also be rooted in authenticity.
People can sense when a speaker is pretending or hiding behind a mask. Artificial confidence, exaggerated enthusiasm, or forced authority destroys trust. Authenticity, in contrast, creates credibility. A leader who speaks honestly, even when the truth is difficult, earns respect. A leader who acknowledges mistakes gains trust. A leader who expresses their true values builds loyalty. Authentic communication does not mean revealing every emotion or weakness. It means speaking from sincerity, integrity, and self-awareness. It means that your words match your actions, your tone matches your intentions, and your communication reflects your real character. Authenticity is magnetic because people follow leaders they feel they can understand, believe in, and relate to.
The leadership voice is also a voice of vision. Leaders are not ordinary communicators. They must be able to speak in a way that helps others see the future. People follow those who can show them what is possible, what matters, and what they can become. A leader paints a picture with words, guiding people's imagination and connecting their daily efforts to a bigger purpose. When a leader speaks of vision, others feel a sense of hope, direction, and belonging. They feel that they are part of something meaningful. A strong leadership voice does not only describe what is happening now, it points toward what can happen next. It turns uncertainties into pathways and challenges into opportunities. This ability to communicate vision is one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership, because without vision, there is no direction, and without direction, there is no movement. The influence of a leadership voice extends into every aspect of life. In the workplace, it sets the atmosphere of the team. In relationships, it builds trust and stability. In communities, it inspires unity and progress. In personal development, it strengthens identity and self-worth. Speaking like a leader affects not only how others see you, but also how you see yourself. When your voice carries confidence, your mind begins to align with that confidence. When your words express clarity, your thoughts become more organized. When your communication reflects purpose, your actions follow that purpose. The leadership voice is therefore both an internal and external transformation. It shapes your behavior while shaping the behavior of those around you.
In learning to speak like a leader, you're not learning how to perform. You're learning how to influence with integrity. You're learning how to express your true self with strength. You're learning how to connect with others on a deeper level. You're learning how to guide minds, calm emotions, and move people toward action. The journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about discovering your own potential and expressing it through communication. The voice you already have contains the seeds of leadership, clarity, confidence, and power. This chapter is an invitation to explore that voice, develop it, refine it, and prepare it to become a force that others can trust, follow, and be inspired by. Leadership begins with a voice. It always has, and it always will. And when your voice grows, your influence grows. When your communication strengthens, your opportunities expand. When your words align with purpose, your leadership becomes natural, authentic, and transformative. Speaking like a leader is not a destination, but a path, a continuous journey of awareness, growth, and impact. This chapter marks the first step of that journey, the moment when you begin to understand that your voice is not simply a tool, but a source of power, stability, and inspiration. The more deeply you develop it, the more powerful your leadership will become.
Chapter 2. Inner Confidence, the Foundation of Leadership Communication. Confidence is the silent force that shapes every word, every tone, every expression, and every message a leader delivers. It is the invisible energy behind the voice, the internal strength that determines how others perceive, trust, and follow the person who speaks. While techniques, strategies, and communication skills are essential, none of them matter without the foundation of inner confidence.
A leader may choose the right words, plan their speech, or structure their message perfectly, but if the voice carrying those words lacks conviction, the message loses its power. People do not only listen to the content of speech, they listen to the emotional state behind it. When the inner confidence of the speaker is strong, the communication becomes natural, compelling, and influential. When it is weak, even the most carefully crafted sentences feel empty and unconvincing. Inner confidence is not arrogance, loudness, or a display of dominance. True confidence is calm, grounded, and steady. It is not a performance, but a presence. It does not need to shout to be heard. It does not need to boast to feel worthy. It does not need to overpower others to feel strong. Confident leaders do not seek validation from external approval because their sense of worth comes from within. They speak with certainty not because they believe they are perfect, but because they trust their ability to learn, adapt, and lead. Their confidence is not built on ego, but on self-awareness, emotional maturity, and clarity of purpose. This makes their voice resonate with authenticity, solidity, and trust.
Inner confidence is developed through understanding oneself. A leader must know their strengths, weaknesses, fears, values, and motivations. When a person tries to speak like a leader without understanding who they are, their communication becomes fragile. They may copy others, imitate styles that do not suit them, or try to sound confident while feeling insecure on the inside. But when a leader speaks from a place of self-knowledge, their voice aligns with their identity, creating a deep sense of stability. People sense when a speaker stands firmly within themselves. They hear it in the tone, feel it in the rhythm, and see it in the posture. Self-awareness brings authenticity, and authenticity brings confidence. One of the greatest obstacles to developing inner confidence is fear. Fear of judgment, fear of mistakes, fear of not being good enough. These fears create internal noise that distorts communication. When fear dominates the mind, the voice hesitates, the body tightens, and the message becomes uncertain. A leader cannot communicate powerfully while fighting their own inner voice of doubt. To build inner confidence, one must confront these fears rather than avoid them. A leader learns to observe fear without becoming controlled by it. They understand that fear is a natural part of growth, not a sign of weakness. Every confident leader has faced moments of anxiety and uncertainty, yet they chose to move forward despite the discomfort. This courage, the willingness to speak even when fear is present, is what transforms fear into strength. Another element that strengthens inner confidence is clarity of purpose. Leaders who know why they speak always speak with greater conviction than those who speak without direction. Purpose acts as an internal compass, aligning thoughts, emotions, and actions. When a leader connects their communication to a mission greater than themselves, their voice gains depth and power. They are not speaking to impress, they are speaking to guide. They are not speaking to be admired, they are speaking to move others toward a meaningful future. Purpose gives the voice weight because it adds meaning behind the words. People trust leaders who speak from purpose because they feel the sincerity in their message.
Confidence also grows through preparation. While confidence is internal, it is supported by knowledge, practice, and experience. Leaders who understand their subject, anticipate challenges, and prepare their thoughts naturally speak with more certainty. Preparation reduces doubt because it replaces the unknown with understanding. It also allows the leader to remain composed during unexpected moments because they have built a foundation strong enough to handle change. Preparation does not mean memorizing words or controlling every detail. It means becoming familiar enough with the message, the context, and the goal that the leader can speak naturally, fluidly, and confidently. When preparation meets purpose, the voice becomes strong and reliable. Another core of inner confidence is emotional stability. Leadership communication requires a balanced inner world. When emotions are chaotic, the voice becomes unstable. When anger, fear, or insecurity are dominant, the tone becomes sharp, defensive, or hesitant. A confident leader is not someone who never feels emotions, but someone who manages them with awareness. Emotional stability allows the leader to remain calm under pressure, composed during conflict, and focused during uncertainty. This calmness becomes audible in their voice. People trust voices that remain steady in the middle of storms. They follow leaders who can think clearly when others panic. Emotional stability turns communication into a source of reassurance. Inner confidence is also strengthened through action. Confidence does not grow through thinking alone. It grows through experience, through speaking, through facing difficult conversations, and through practicing leadership communication in real situations. Every time a leader speaks with intention, they expand their belief in their ability to communicate powerfully. Every small act of courage increases their internal stability. Over time, these experiences accumulate, forming a deep reservoir of self-trust. This self-trust becomes the foundation of a leadership voice that feels natural and unforced. Leaders who wait for confidence before they act never develop it. Leaders who act despite uncertainty become confident.
One of the most transformative insights about confidence is that it comes from self-respect. When a person respects themselves, their values, their time, their boundaries, their abilities, their communication automatically becomes stronger. Self-respect changes the way a person presents themselves to others. They speak with more clarity because they believe their voice matters. They express their ideas more confidently because they trust their own thoughts. They set boundaries with firmness because they know their worth. They say no without guilt because they are not driven by pleasing others. Self-respect gives the leader an inner dignity that others can feel. This dignity becomes the root of a powerful voice. Confidence also requires consistency. A leader cannot expect to inspire confidence in others if their own behavior is inconsistent. When actions and words conflict, confidence weakens. When promises are made but not kept, the voice loses credibility. When the leader behaves unpredictably, people become uncertain. Confidence grows when a leader shows reliability through repeated behavior over time. Consistency creates trust, and trust reinforces confidence. When a leader knows they act with integrity, their voice becomes stronger because it is backed by real behavior, not empty claims. Another aspect of inner confidence is the ability to embrace imperfection. Many people remain silent or hesitant because they fear making mistakes. They want their speech to be flawless, their delivery perfect, their ideas fully formed. But leadership communication is not about perfection, it is about impact. Leaders are human, and their humanity makes their communication relatable. A leader who embraces imperfection speaks with greater freedom because their confidence does not depend on flawless performance. They understand that mistakes are part of learning, and vulnerability does not weaken leadership, it strengthens connection. People do not trust perfect masks, they trust authentic humans. This acceptance removes pressure and allows the leader's true voice to emerge.
Inner confidence also comes from the ability to focus on service rather than self. When a speaker concentrates too much on themselves, how they sound, how they look, whether they are judged, their confidence weakens. Their mind becomes filled with self-consciousness instead of clarity. But when they shift their focus to serving the listener, helping the team, improving the situation, or advancing the mission, the self-consciousness fades. Confidence grows when the leader's attention moves from "how will I appear" to
How can I help? Service-oriented communication removes ego and replaces it with purpose. This shift creates a voice that feels more authentic, powerful, and stable. The foundation of inner confidence is built through the relationship a leader has with themselves. A person who speaks to themselves with harshness cannot speak to others with true confidence. The internal dialogue shapes the external voice. Leaders learn to develop a kind, supportive, and empowering inner voice that encourages growth rather than magnifies fear. They speak to themselves with patience, challenge themselves with respect, and motivate themselves with belief. This internal leadership becomes the root of external leadership. When the inner voice aligns with strength, the outer voice becomes a natural extension of that strength. In the journey of leadership communication, inner confidence is the element that gives life to every technique taught later in this book. Without confidence, clarity sounds uncertain. Without confidence, emotional intelligence feels fragile. Without confidence, storytelling loses its influence. Without confidence, vision becomes difficult to communicate. Confidence transforms communication from a mechanical activity into a powerful expression of leadership identity. It is the foundation upon which everything else stands.
As you continue reading, remember that confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build. It is not something you wish for. It is something you practice. It is not something that appears suddenly. It grows in layers through awareness, intention, experience, and self-respect. Every leader you admire today once stood where you stand now, uncertain, quiet, unsure of their voice. They became confident because they decided to step forward, to speak, to learn, to grow, and to trust their potential. Your leadership voice will grow in the same way. Inner confidence is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning. It is the soil in which your communication skills will take root and flourish. As this chapter closes, remember that your voice becomes powerful when your inner world becomes strong, stable, and aligned. The more deeply you trust yourself, the more fully others will trust your voice. And when your confidence is anchored within, your communication becomes unstoppable.
Chapter 3. Speaking with Authority. Tone, Pace, and Presence. Authority in communication is not something that can be forced, demanded, or imposed. It is something that is felt. It emerges naturally from the way a leader uses their tone, their pace, their rhythm, their energy, and their presence. Many people believe authority comes from position or power, but the truth is far deeper. Authority comes from the way one speaks. A title can give someone the right to talk, but it can never give their voice impact. Impact comes from presence, and presence is carried through the voice. In this chapter, we explore how leaders speak with authority, not by raising their voice, but by elevating their presence, shaping their tone, mastering their pace, and creating a communication style that makes others listen without being told to. The tone of a leader is the emotional coloring of their words. It is the subtle, invisible quality that communicates confidence, calmness, clarity, and intention. The human brain reacts to tone before it processes meaning. When someone speaks with a calm, steady, grounded tone, the listener instinctively feels safe. When someone speaks with a rushed, shaky, or tense tone, the listener becomes uncertain, even if the words themselves are intelligent and logical. Tone has the power to open minds or close them, to inspire trust or create doubt, to strengthen leadership or weaken it. A leader's tone must therefore be shaped by awareness and intention. It must communicate stability even when the moment is unstable, strength even when challenges arise, encouragement even when the situation is difficult, and clarity even when the path ahead is unclear.
Speaking with authority begins with controlling the emotional energy behind the voice. Leaders speak from their center, from a place of calmness and focus. They do not allow stress, fear, or frustration to leak into their tone, because they understand that others will feel it immediately. A leader who remains emotionally steady creates an atmosphere of confidence. Their tone does not rise unnecessarily, does not rush, does not tremble, and does not crack under pressure. Instead, it carries the weight of someone who believes in their message and trusts their ability to deliver it. This emotional strength is not something that appears magically. It comes from the inner confidence developed in the previous chapter. When the mind is stable, the tone becomes stable. When the heart is calm, the voice becomes calm. Authority begins on the inside and reveals itself through tone. Pace is another essential element of authoritative communication. Many people speak quickly because they are nervous, insecure, or afraid of being judged. Fast speech often signals uncertainty, and listeners can sense this immediately. When someone rushes, it feels as though they want to escape the moment or hide behind words. Leaders, however, understand the power of slow, deliberate, intentional pacing. They speak at a rhythm that communicates thoughtfulness and composure. They allow their message to breathe. They give listeners time to absorb ideas, reflect, and respond internally. Slow pacing does not mean dragging or speaking without energy. It means speaking with control. It shows that the leader is not afraid of silence and not pressured by time. It shows respect for the listener and confidence in the message. Pace becomes a form of presence.
Presence is the invisible aura that surrounds a leader when they speak. It is felt before the first word is spoken and remains long after the last sentence is finished. Presence is created when tone, pace, confidence, clarity, and emotional alignment merge into a single, powerful expression of self. A leader with presence does not need to shout. They do not need to force attention. Their calmness draws others in. Their focus anchors the room. Their voice becomes a point of stability. Presence is not theatrics. It is not performance. It is the pure expression of someone who is fully present in the moment, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Leaders with presence communicate not only ideas, but a sense of strength, purpose, and direction. Authority also comes from articulation and clarity. Leaders enunciate clearly, not because they want to sound elegant, but because clarity shows respect. When someone speaks with precision, listeners feel that the speaker values their time and wants them to understand. Clarity eliminates confusion and strengthens influence. It turns abstract concepts into vivid ideas. It transforms complicated thoughts into simple messages. It helps people remember, repeat, and act upon the leader's words. A voice that communicates clarity communicates authority. Breath control is a hidden but essential element of authoritative communication. The quality of a voice depends greatly on the breath behind it. Shallow breathing produces a weak, shaky, or inconsistent tone, while deep, controlled breathing produces a strong, steady, and resonant voice. Leaders breathe slowly and intentionally. They pause naturally. They allow their breath to support their words rather than constrain them. Breath control gives the leader the ability to maintain authority even under pressure. It prevents rushing, reduces anxiety, and stabilizes tone. When breath is stable, the voice becomes a source of power.
Another powerful component of authoritative communication is the strategic use of pauses. Many inexperienced speakers fear silence, believing it will make them appear unsure.
But leaders understand that silence, when used intentionally, adds depth to the message. A well-placed pause allows the listener to reflect, creates anticipation, and gives weight to the next sentence. Pauses make speech more engaging, more impactful, and more memorable. They create rhythm and allow emotional resonance. Silence becomes a tool of authority because it shows the speaker is not rushed or intimidated. It shows they control the moment instead of being controlled by it. Authority is also expressed through vocal variety. A monotone voice, even if calm and controlled, loses impact quickly because it lacks emotional resonance. Leaders modulate their tones subtly to emphasize meaning. They use gentle rises and falls to highlight important points. They allow warmth to enter the voice when expressing care, firmness when giving direction, softness when building trust, and energy when inspiring action. This does not mean being overly dramatic. It means guiding the listener's emotional experience through thoughtful vocal choices. Vocal variety keeps attention, deepens engagement, and strengthens influence.
Another essential aspect of authoritative communication is conviction. When a leader believes deeply in what they are saying, that belief becomes audible. Conviction adds strength to the voice that cannot be faked. It gives words gravity. It makes the message feel alive. Conviction is not shouting or forcing emotion. It is a quiet, steady power that emerges from alignment between inner values and outer expression. People follow leaders who speak with conviction because they feel the truth behind their words. A voice without conviction may be technically strong, but emotionally empty. A voice with conviction can move people even with simple sentences. Leadership communication is the art of aligning internal belief with external expression. Authority is also strengthened through simplicity. Leaders understand that complexity weakens communication. When a message is cluttered, long, or filled with unnecessary detail, listeners become confused or overwhelmed. Simplicity communicates strength. It shows the leader understands their message deeply enough to express it clearly. It shows confidence, because simple communication requires courage, the courage to remove excess and speak with precision. Simplicity makes messages more inspiring, more memorable, and more actionable. A leader who communicates simply speaks with authority. Nonverbal elements also contribute to vocal authority. The way a leader stands, holds their shoulders, moves their hands, and maintains eye contact affects how their voice is received. Body language acts as a silent partner to speech. When posture is upright and relaxed, the voice sounds more stable. When gestures are natural and expressive, the message becomes more dynamic. When eye contact is steady and warm, connection strengthens. Nonverbal presence amplifies vocal presence, creating a unified expression of authority.
Emotional mastery is perhaps the most important foundation of authoritative communication. A leader speaks with authority not because they suppress emotions, but because they regulate them. They do not allow reactivity to distort their tone. They speak from a place of emotional balance. When emotions are calm, the voice becomes calm. When the inner world is centered, the outer expression becomes centered. Emotional mastery makes the voice trustworthy, because listeners feel the leader is not speaking from impulse, but from clarity. Authority also grows through consistency. When a leader consistently communicates with steadiness, clarity, and presence, people begin to trust them more deeply. Authority is not created in a single conversation. It is built over time. Each communication reinforces the leader's identity. Each interaction strengthens the leader's voice. A leader's authority becomes a reputation, and this reputation amplifies every future message. People listen more carefully to voices they trust. Speaking with authority requires patience. It is not developed overnight. It is shaped through practice, self-awareness, reflection,
and experience. It grows each time you speak with intention, each time you control your tone, each time you slow your pace, each time you remain calm under pressure, and each time you speak from conviction. Authority is the natural result of mastering yourself before mastering your voice.
As this chapter comes to a close, remember that authority in communication is not about appearing powerful. It is about being fully present. It is about aligning your tone, your pace, your breath, your confidence, and your inner world into a single expression that others can trust. It is about speaking not to dominate but to guide, not to impress but to inspire, not to control but to connect. When your voice carries the weight of presence, calmness, clarity, and belief, people will listen, not because they have to, but because they want to. Your leadership voice becomes authoritative when it becomes an authentic reflection of your inner strength. The more you develop your tone, your pace, your presence, and your emotional mastery, the more your communication becomes a force others respect. Authority is not in the words, it is in the person who speaks them. And as your presence grows, your impact will grow with it.
Chapter 4. The Psychology of Influence, How Leaders Shape Minds and Inspire Action. Influence is the heartbeat of leadership. It is the invisible force that guides decisions, shapes beliefs, and moves people toward action without the need for pressure, manipulation, or authority. True leadership is not about controlling behavior, but about inspiring it. It is not about commanding obedience, but awakening commitment. It is not about forcing change, but creating the conditions where people choose change on their own. To influence others, a leader must understand the psychology behind human behavior, motivation, emotion, and perception. Influence is not an accident. It is the natural result of understanding how people think and feel. In this chapter, we explore how leaders tap into that psychology to communicate in a way that naturally inspires trust, respect, and willingness. Human beings are emotional creatures long before they are logical ones. Although we like to believe that we make decisions based on reason, most decisions begin with emotion and are later justified with logic. People remember how a leader makes them feel, more than they remember the specific words spoken. Influence starts where emotion and meaning intersect. A leader who understands this does not try to overpower logic, but communicates in a way that touches human emotion. They show empathy, understanding, and sincerity. Their voice carries warmth when needed and firmness when necessary. They speak in a way that resonates not only with the mind, but with the heart. The psychology of influence begins with emotional connection, because without connection, communication becomes noise.
One of the first psychological principles of influence is trust. People cannot be influenced by someone they do not trust. Trust is built through consistency, honesty, transparency, and presence. When a leader communicates with integrity, saying what they mean, following through on commitments, and speaking with authenticity, people begin to trust their voice. Trust makes influence effortless. When people trust a leader, they naturally listen, internalize, and act. And trust does not come from perfection. It comes from sincerity. A leader who admits mistakes earns more trust than one who pretends to be flawless. A leader who listens before speaking builds more credibility than one who speaks without understanding. Trust is the foundation, and influence is the structure built upon it. Another psychological principle of influence is authority. Not the authority of control, but the authority of competence. People are influenced by those who understand what they speak about, who communicate with clarity, and who demonstrate expertise
without arrogance. Authority grows when a leader speaks with knowledge, prepares thoughtfully, and expresses ideas in a way that simplifies complexity. People do not follow those who confuse them. They follow those who bring clarity. When a leader can break down a complicated idea into a simple message, listeners feel guided rather than overwhelmed. Authority is not about superiority. It is about giving others confidence in your understanding. The more deeply a leader understands their subject and their mission, the more naturally they influence others.
Leadership influence also grows through empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand what others feel, think, or fear. It is not agreement with every emotion, but awareness of it. When a leader speaks with empathy, listeners feel recognized and valued. They feel that the leader sees their struggles, respects their experiences, and cares about their well-being. This emotional recognition makes them far more open to guidance. People resist leaders who ignore them, but they follow leaders who understand them. Empathy opens minds, reduces defensiveness, and builds bridges of influence. An empathetic leader does not speak from above, but alongside. They communicate in a way that connects instead of divides. Storytelling is one of the most powerful psychological tools of influence. Stories bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to the emotional core of the listener. They create images, evoke memories, awaken feelings, and make abstract ideas tangible. People forget instructions, but remember stories. A leader who uses storytelling effectively transforms concepts into experiences and strategies into journeys. A story can change a belief, shift a perspective, or inspire action more deeply than any logical explanation. Throughout history, the leaders who shaped humanity were not only thinkers, but storytellers. Their stories carried vision, meaning, and emotion. A leader who can tell stories with authenticity holds influence in the minds and hearts of others long after the words are spoken. Influence is also strengthened through the psychology of consistency. Human beings are drawn to what is stable. A leader who communicates with consistency creates an environment of trust and predictability. Their voice does not change dramatically depending on mood. Their reactions are stable. Their values are clear. Their behavior matches their words. Consistency creates comfort and reduces fear, making people more willing to follow. In contrast, inconsistent communication creates confusion and uncertainty, weakening influence. When people know what to expect from a leader, they feel secure. When they feel secure, they become more open to influence.
Another aspect of influence is the ability to create belonging. Human beings have an innate desire to be part of something larger than themselves. A leader who communicates in a way that makes people feel included, valued, and part of a shared mission becomes naturally influential. When people feel like a necessary part of the vision, their motivation increases. They no longer follow out of obligation, but from personal investment. Influence thrives when people feel connected not only to the leader, but to the community and purpose the leader creates. Connection transforms followers into contributors and supporters into believers. Leaders also influence through the psychology of vision. Vision is the ability to see a future that does not yet exist and make others believe in it. People follow leaders who give them direction, meaning, and hope. Vision answers the question, why does this matter? Without vision, communication becomes mechanical and uninspiring. With vision, communication becomes fuel for motivation. When a leader paints a vivid picture of what is possible, people begin to imagine themselves within that picture. They feel the energy of progress and the purpose behind their actions. Vision activates human imagination, and imagination is one of the most powerful drivers of behavior. A leader who can communicate vision influences not only actions, but belief systems.
Influence also depends on framing, the way a leader presents information.
The same message can inspire confidence or generate fear depending on the frame used. Leaders who understand framing position challenges as opportunities, setbacks as lessons, and obstacles as pathways to improvement. They do not deny difficulty, but frame it in a way that empowers people instead of discouraging them. Framing shapes perception, and perception shapes action. When a leader frames the narrative with strength and clarity, people respond with resilience and optimism. Another psychological principle of influence is reciprocity. When people receive value, respect, or support from a leader, they naturally feel motivated to give back through effort, loyalty, or trust. Influence grows when a leader serves others, shares credit, and uplifts people. Service creates loyalty. Loyalty creates willingness. Willingness creates influence. A leader who gives more than they demand earns influence that cannot be forced. This exchange of value creates a relationship, and relationships are the core of lasting influence. Influence is also shaped by the leader's identity, how they see themselves and how they present themselves. People are drawn to leaders who embody the qualities they admire: integrity, courage, clarity, humility, resilience, and emotional maturity. When a leader's identity reflects strength of character, their influence deepens. Leadership is not only about what you say, but who you are. The psychology of influence teaches that people follow character before they follow words. A leader's personal integrity becomes the foundation of their influence.
Another essential principle of influence is certainty. People are attracted to certainty because it reduces anxiety. A leader who communicates with certainty, even in difficult situations, provides a sense of direction. Certainty does not mean pretending to know everything. It means communicating clarity about what you do know, what you believe, and what you are committed to. Certainty is not arrogance, it is grounded confidence. When people hear certainty in a leader's voice, they feel reassured, they feel guided, they feel that someone is navigating the path ahead with stability. Certainty relaxes the emotional system, allowing influence to take root more easily. Influence also arises from inspiration. Leaders who inspire awaken something deeper in people, a sense of potential, purpose, possibility, and strength. Inspirational communication helps people believe in their abilities, commit to their goals, and rise above their fears. Leaders inspire not through dramatic speeches, but through sincerity, vision, emotional depth, and authentic expression. Inspiration is influence at its highest level because it transforms people from within. Finally, influence is sustained through alignment. When a leader's words, actions, tone, and values align, their influence becomes unstoppable. Misalignment kills influence. Alignment amplifies it. When a leader truly believes in their message, lives what they teach, and communicates with authenticity, people feel drawn to their leadership. Influence becomes natural, effortless, and lasting.
As we conclude this chapter, remember that influence is not manipulation, it is connection. It is not control, it is inspiration. It is not pressure, it is meaning. Influence is the art of shaping minds, lifting hearts, and guiding people toward a vision that elevates everyone. When you understand the psychology behind human behavior, your communication becomes powerful. When you speak from trust, empathy, vision, clarity, and authenticity, your voice becomes transformative. This is the essence of leadership: to influence not through force, but through presence, understanding, and inspiration.
Chapter 5: Emotional Intelligence in Leadership Speech. The Power of Understanding Before Speaking.
Emotional intelligence is the invisible architecture behind every powerful leadership message. It is the ability to understand emotions, both your own and those of others, and to use that understanding to guide communication with clarity, empathy, and influence. While many people focus on what leaders say, the true secret to leadership communication lies in how leaders sense, interpret, and respond to the emotional world of the people they speak to. A leader might have the strongest ideas, the clearest plans, and the most compelling vision, but without emotional intelligence, their message will fail to reach hearts, minds, and motivations. Leadership is not just the transfer of information, it is the transfer of understanding, trust, meaning, and emotional guidance. Emotional intelligence is the bridge that makes this transfer possible. Human communication is never purely logical. Beneath every conversation lies a complex landscape of feelings, fears, hopes, insecurities, desires, frustrations, dreams, expectations, and unspoken concerns. A leader who ignores this emotional landscape speaks only to the surface of people, not to their depth. Their words may be heard, but they will not be felt or believed. But a leader who understands the emotions in the room can shape their message in a way that resonates with the emotional state of their listeners, guiding them gently but powerfully toward clarity, calmness, and commitment. Emotional intelligence allows the leader to sense what is invisible, interpret what is unspoken, and respond in ways that create trust and unity. The first dimension of emotional intelligence in leadership communication is self-awareness. A leader must know what they are feeling before they begin to speak. When emotions are unexamined, they leak into the voice in subtle ways, through tone, volume, pacing, and energy. A leader who feels anxious but does not recognize it will sound rushed. A leader who feels irritated but is unaware will sound sharp. A leader who feels insecure may overcompensate by speaking too loudly or with forced authority.
Self-awareness helps leaders recognize their internal state so they can regulate it before communicating. It allows them to separate their message from their mood, ensuring that their communication reflects intention rather than impulse. When a leader understands themselves, their speech becomes balanced, grounded, and trustworthy. Self-regulation is the second dimension. Emotional intelligence does not demand the absence of emotion. It demands the ability to guide emotion. Leaders experience fear, frustration, disappointment, and stress like anyone else, but they do not let these emotions control their voice or distort their message. They pause before reacting. They breathe before speaking. They choose their tone deliberately. They refuse to speak from emotional turbulence. This discipline gives their speech stability. People trust leaders who remain composed because composure communicates strength and reliability. A leader who can regulate their emotions becomes a source of calmness in moments of tension. Their presence comforts rather than destabilizes. Their voice reassures rather than alarms. Emotional regulation transforms communication into leadership. Empathy is the third core of emotional intelligence, and perhaps the most powerful. Empathy is the ability to understand what others feel, even when those feelings are not spoken. It is the sensitivity to emotional signals, the tone of someone's voice, the tension in their posture, the hesitation in their words, the worry in their silence. An empathetic leader does not dismiss these signals, they listen to them. Empathy does not mean agreeing with every emotion or absorbing the feelings of others. It means recognizing what people feel so that communication becomes relevant, respectful, and supportive. When people feel understood, they open up. When they open up, they become receptive. When they become receptive, influence becomes natural. People do not follow leaders who ignore their emotions. They follow leaders who acknowledge them.
A leader with emotional intelligence listens not only to words, but beyond words. They listen to the pain hidden beneath anger, the fear hidden beneath resistance,
the uncertainty hidden beneath doubt. They understand that most negative behaviors are rooted in emotional needs. When a person feels unheard, they argue. When they feel disrespected, they withdraw. When they feel insecure, they react defensively. When they feel overwhelmed, they shut down. A leader with emotional intelligence recognizes these patterns not as obstacles, but as invitations for better communication. Instead of reacting to the surface behavior, they address the emotional need beneath it. This ability to see behind the mask transforms conflict into understanding, resistance into cooperation, and fear into trust. Another dimension of emotionally intelligent leadership communication is adaptability. A leader speaks differently to someone who is anxious than to someone who is confident. They communicate differently to someone who is discouraged than to someone who is inspired. They adjust their tone, pace, and message depending on the emotional context. They know that there is no single communication style that works for every moment. They shift when needed, not because they are inauthentic, but because they are aware. Emotional intelligence allows leaders to meet people where they are emotionally and guide them where they need to be. This adaptability is not manipulation, it is sensitivity. It is the ability to harmonize with the emotional rhythm of the situation so that communication becomes effective. Social awareness is another cornerstone of emotional intelligence. Leaders do not only manage one-on-one communication, they read group dynamics. In a team meeting, they sense tension before it emerges. They detect when morale is low, even if productivity is high. They feel when people are confused, overwhelmed, or disconnected. They notice when silence is discomfort rather than agreement. Social awareness enables leaders to respond to collective emotional states. They can diffuse tension before it escalates, inspire energy when motivation wanes, and bring clarity when confusion spreads. They use their voice to shift the emotional atmosphere, not by force, but by understanding.
Emotionally intelligent leaders understand the power of validation. Validation does not mean accepting every idea or agreeing with every emotion. It means acknowledging the reality of the other person's experience. When people feel genuinely acknowledged, they become more open to dialogue. Validation creates emotional safety, and emotional safety opens the door to influence. A leader who says, "I understand this is difficult," or "I can see why you feel this way," creates a space where people feel seen. And people who feel seen are far more willing to listen, learn, and cooperate. Validation transforms walls into bridges. Another powerful aspect of emotional intelligence in leadership communication is timing. Even the right message will fail if delivered at the wrong moment. Emotionally intelligent leaders know when to speak, when to wait, when to push, and when to pause. They sense the emotional readiness of others and adjust their communication accordingly. They do not force conversations when emotions are too high or energy too low. They do not push feedback when someone is overwhelmed. They do not deliver criticism during moments of vulnerability. Instead, they wait for the moment when the listener is emotionally prepared. Timing often determines whether a message becomes wisdom or rejection. Emotionally intelligent leaders also recognize the importance of humility in communication. Humility does not weaken leadership, it strengthens it. It allows the leader to say, "I don't know, I made a mistake," or "Your idea might be better than mine," without losing authority. Humility creates respect because it shows authenticity. It removes defensiveness and encourages open dialogue. A humble leader listens more than they speak, learns from others, and adapts based on feedback. This flexibility makes their communication more genuine, effective, and influential.
Another essential component of emotional intelligence is emotional resonance. Leaders who resonate with others emotionally create a sense of alignment and unity. Resonance happens when the emotional tone of the leader matches the emotional needs of the listener. If someone is afraid, the leader resonates with calmness. If someone is discouraged, the leader resonates with optimism. If someone is angry, the leader resonates with steady grounding.
This emotional synchrony creates trust because the listener feels that the leader gets them. With resonance, communication becomes not just words, but a shared emotional experience. Emotionally intelligent leaders also understand the power of optimism. Optimism is not denial of difficulty. It is the ability to acknowledge challenges while still believing in solutions. Optimistic communication gives people hope without lying to them. It provides encouragement without ignoring reality. It strengthens resilience without offering false promises. When a leader communicates with grounded optimism, they become a source of emotional strength. Their voice becomes a reminder that even in difficulty, progress is possible. The final and perhaps most profound aspect of emotional intelligence in leadership communication is compassion. Compassion is empathy in action. It is the desire to support, uplift, and empower others. Compassion does not weaken authority. It deepens it. A compassionate leader communicates in a way that reduces fear, heals tension, and inspires loyalty. People follow compassionate leaders not because they must, but because they want to. Compassion gives a voice the emotional warmth that turns leadership into human connection.
As this chapter concludes, remember that emotional intelligence is not an accessory to leadership communication. It is its core. It is the force that turns words into connection, connection into trust, and trust into influence. It allows leaders to speak with sensitivity, awareness, and depth. It transforms communication from an exchange of information into an exchange of understanding. When a leader learns to read emotions, regulate their own feelings, resonate with others, and communicate with empathy and clarity, their voice becomes a source of stability, guidance, and inspiration. Chapter 6. The Language of Leaders. Words that shape minds and build influence. The language of a leader is not accidental. It is deliberate, intentional, and deeply connected to the effect the leader wishes to create. Words have power, far more power than most people realize. They can calm or provoke, inspire or discourage, unite or divide. The difference between an ordinary communicator and a leader lies in how consciously they choose their words. Leaders understand that language is not just a tool for transmitting information, it is a tool for shaping perception, building trust, creating direction, and influencing emotion. Leadership is expressed through language, and the words a leader uses become the architecture of their impact. Language is powerful because it frames reality. The same situation can feel overwhelming or manageable, depending on the words used to describe it. When a leader uses language that creates clarity, possibility, and purpose, others begin to see the world through that framework. But when a leader uses language that reflects fear, confusion, or negativity, people absorb that emotional state as well. This is why leadership language must be chosen with care. Words become lenses through which people understand challenges, directions, and decisions. A leader's language can turn obstacles into opportunities or transform small problems into crises. It can uplift a group or break its spirit. Leadership begins in the mind, but it becomes visible through language. The first characteristic of leadership language is clarity. Leaders speak in clear, simple, direct language because clarity builds trust and inspires action. When messages are complicated or filled with unnecessary details, people feel overwhelmed or uncertain. But when leaders express ideas concisely, listeners feel guided. Clarity does not mean oversimplifying or avoiding complexity. It means expressing complexity in a way that is understandable. Clear language shows mastery of thought. People trust leaders who can explain things simply because it demonstrates both intelligence and care. Leaders remove confusion with their words. They do not add to it.
Another element of leadership language is decisiveness. Leaders do not hide behind vague expressions. They do not weaken their speech with hesitations or uncertainty when clarity is needed. Instead of saying, maybe we could, leaders say, we will. Instead of, I guess this might work, leaders say, this is the direction we will take. Decisive language does not mean being rigid or inflexible. It means speaking with conviction. People follow voices that sound certain. Hesitation creates doubt, but decisiveness creates confidence. Even when leaders are navigating uncertainty, they express their thoughts with grounded clarity. Here is what we know. Here is what we are working toward. Here is the next step. Decisiveness shapes perceptions and gives people a sense of direction. Leadership language is also future-oriented. While ordinary communication often gets stuck in the present or the past, leaders use language that points toward possibility, progress, and vision. They use expressions like, we can become, we will achieve, this will lead us to, because they understand that people need to see a path ahead. Future-oriented language creates motivation and hope. It aligns the team or audience with a shared direction. It reminds people that today's actions contribute to something meaningful. Leaders use language not only to describe what is happening now, but to paint a picture of what could be. This forward-looking style of speaking transforms uncertainty into purpose. Emotionally intelligent leaders also choose uplifting language. They avoid expressions that create fear, division, or negativity. They do not use language that belittles, shames, or discourages. Instead, they use words that strengthen, encourage, and empower. They speak of strength instead of weakness, improvement instead of failure, lessons instead of mistakes, resilience instead of defeat. Uplifting language does not ignore challenges. It reframes them in a constructive way. It gives people the emotional courage to keep moving. It turns fear into determination. It transforms setbacks into stepping stones. This kind of language does not deny reality, it elevates it.
Another powerful aspect of leadership language is precision. Leaders choose their words carefully because they understand that careless language creates confusion and misunderstanding. Precision means saying exactly what you mean and meaning exactly what you say. It means avoiding exaggeration, responsibility. People trust leaders who communicate with accuracy. Precision also reduces conflict because most conflict arises from misunderstandings. When language is precise, communication becomes reliable. Leaders also use inclusive language. They avoid creating separation between themselves and others. Instead of saying, I need you to, they often say, we will, or together we can, or let's work on this. Inclusive language creates unity. It transforms followers into partners. It empowers people by making them feel valued and included. When leaders speak with inclusive language, people no longer feel like they are being ordered, they feel like they are contributing to something important. This sense of inclusion builds loyalty, commitment, and motivation. The most effective leaders speak in ways that make people feel they are part of a shared mission. Respectful language is another hallmark of leadership. Leaders do not use language that diminishes others. They do not speak with sarcasm, condescension, or disrespect. Respectful language builds trust, even in moments of disagreement. It creates a safe emotional environment. It shows professionalism and maturity. Respectful leaders speak in a way that elevates the conversation rather than lowering it. They use their voice to build rather than destroy. Respect is not a weakness. It is a strength that amplifies influence.
Leadership language is also characterized by honesty. People do not trust leaders who hide the truth, distort facts, or sugarcoat realities. Honest language communicates integrity. It creates transparency.
It builds confidence in the leader's credibility. Honest communication does not mean being harsh, it means expressing truth with clarity and empathy. People respond to honesty because it signals authenticity. They feel connected to leaders who speak truthfully. Honesty binds people to a leader more deeply than charisma or eloquence ever could. Another element of leadership language is encouragement. Leaders use words that help people believe in themselves. They recognize effort, progress, and potential. They speak in ways that energize rather than drain. Encouragement is not flattery, it is the fuel that strengthens confidence. A single sentence from a leader can change the emotional state of a person. It can turn self-doubt into courage. It can renew motivation. Encouraging language is a tool that leaders use to build people, not just to direct them. Leadership language also avoids necessary negativity. Words like impossible, hopeless, pointless, or useless shut down thinking. Leaders replace these with constructive alternatives like challenging but achievable, difficult but possible with effort. We can improve this, or there is a way forward. This type of language keeps the mind open, flexible, and resilient. It prevents people from feeling defeated. It creates an atmosphere where solutions feel reachable. Leaders know that the words they use either open the door to creativity or close it.
Another defining trait of leadership language is responsibility. Leaders take ownership through their words. They say, "I made a mistake," or "This was my decision," or "I will fix this," instead of shifting blame. Responsibility builds respect. It makes the leader's voice trustworthy. People do not expect leaders to be perfect, but they expect honesty and accountability. When a leader uses responsible language, it strengthens their influence. Leaders also understand the power of brevity. They know that long speeches can tire the mind and weaken the message. They use concise, meaningful language. They speak with purpose, not for attention. Brevity shows confidence. It shows that the leader does not need extra words to sound strong. Their clarity gives strength to their communication. Brevity also deepens the impact of key ideas because the listener remembers them more easily. One of the most powerful aspects of leadership language is alignment. Words must align with actions. When a leader says one thing and does another, their language loses all power. But when words and actions match, language becomes a source of inspiration. People follow leaders whose behavior reflects their speech. Alignment creates authenticity, and authenticity creates influence.
The language of leaders also reflects identity. Leaders speak from their values, strengths, and character. Their language reveals who they are: honest, confident, empathetic, responsible, and purposeful. When a leader's language reflects their inner world, communication becomes natural and influential. Words become an extension of character, not a performance. Finally, leadership language transforms the emotional atmosphere. It can turn tension into calmness, division into unity, confusion into clarity, and fear into strength. Language shapes culture. It shapes relationships. It shapes the mindset of individuals and the spirit of groups. The voice of a leader becomes the heartbeat of the environment they lead. As this chapter concludes, remember that leadership is expressed through language. Words are not just tools. They are instruments of influence, connection, and vision. The way you speak determines how others feel, think, and act. When you choose your language with awareness, intention, and emotional intelligence, your voice becomes a powerful force for change. Leadership begins in the mind, but it becomes reality through words.
Chapter 7. Communicating Vision: How Leaders Inspire Belief in the Future. Vision is the soul of leadership. It is the invisible fire that gives direction to effort, meaning to struggle, and purpose to the journey. A leader without vision may manage tasks, but they cannot inspire transformation. A leader with vision does not merely point toward the future. They paint it so clearly, so vividly, and so powerfully that others begin to see it as if it already exists. Communicating vision is one of the greatest responsibilities of leadership, because vision is what turns a group of individuals into a unified force, a scattered effort into a shared mission, and ordinary work into a meaningful pursuit. Vision is not a vague dream, it is a guiding light. But for vision to guide, it must be communicated in a way that awakens belief. Human beings do not follow leaders because of authority alone. They follow leaders whose words make them feel that they are part of something meaningful. They follow leaders who give them a future worth striving for. They follow leaders who speak in a way that makes possibility feel real, not distant, achievable, not unreachable, alive, not abstract. Communicating vision is not about describing a goal. It is about activating emotion. It is about helping others feel the importance of the destination and the purpose behind the path. Vision becomes powerful when it moves from the leader's mind into the hearts of the people who hear it. The first element of communicating vision is clarity. A leader must see the vision with sharpness before they can articulate it. Vague or confusing visions cannot inspire. People need to know what they are moving toward. They need a picture they can imagine, a direction they can trust, and a purpose they can feel connected to. When a leader communicates with clarity, using simple, vivid, powerful language, the vision becomes real in the listener's mind. Clarity turns imagination into motivation. A clear vision is like a map. It shows the path even when the journey is difficult.
But clarity alone is not enough. Vision must also be communicated with passion. Passion is the emotional fuel that transforms a description into conviction. People do not follow leaders who talk about the future with indifference. They follow leaders whose voice carries fire, determination, and belief. Passion does not mean shouting or dramatic expression. It means speaking from the depth of one's conviction. When a leader truly believes in the vision, that belief becomes audible in their tone, visible in their eyes, and undeniable in their presence. Passion awakens passion. A leader's emotional commitment inspires commitment in others. Communicating vision also requires authenticity. People can sense when a vision is constructed purely for motivation or image. They sense when the words are empty. But when a leader speaks of a vision that reflects their real values, real dreams, and real dedication, the message resonates deeply. Authentic vision is anchored in meaning. It is not designed to impress, but to inspire. It is not crafted to manipulate, but to elevate. When a leader's vision aligns with their identity, their communication becomes magnetic. Authenticity gives vision its moral weight. Another essential element of communicating vision is relevance. People must feel that the vision includes them, affects them, and empowers them. A vision that feels distant or unrelated will not ignite motivation. A leader must speak in a way that connects the individual to the collective purpose. They must show how each person's effort contributes to the larger picture, how their unique role matters, and how their work is meaningful. When people can see themselves inside the vision, they begin to own it. They transform from spectators into participants. A leader communicates vision not only to guide the future, but to align personal identity with collective purpose.
Leaders who communicate vision effectively also understand the importance of emotional resonance. They do not speak only to the rational mind, but to the emotional core of the listener. They use stories, metaphors, and imagery to bring the vision to life. They explain not just what will happen, but how it will feel. They describe the transformation, the journey, and the impact. Emotional resonance turns vision into an experience. When people feel the vision emotionally, they begin to believe in it. Belief is the foundation of commitment. Communicating vision also demands confidence. A leader must speak of the future not as a possibility, but as a journey worth taking. Even when the path is uncertain, the leader's confidence must be certain. Confidence in vision is not blind optimism, it is grounded hope. It is the belief that effort will matter, that challenges can be overcome, and that progress will emerge from struggle. Confidence is contagious. When people hear a leader speak with unwavering belief, they borrow that belief as their own. Confidence gives the vision wings. Yet powerful vision requires honesty. A leader must acknowledge difficulties without losing hope. People do not follow leaders who pretend that challenges don't exist. They follow leaders who confront challenges with courage and clarity. Honest communication of vision balances realism with optimism. It acknowledges the obstacles but refuses to be defined by them. It says, the path will be hard, but the destination is worth it. Honesty builds trust, and trust strengthens commitment to the vision. Another key aspect of communicating vision is repetition. A vision must be communicated again and again until it becomes embedded in the collective consciousness. Leaders repeat the vision not because people forget, but because repetition creates alignment. Each time the leader returns to the vision, it gains new meaning, new clarity, and new emotional energy. Repetition builds momentum. It transforms vision from a message into a mindset. Over time, the vision becomes part of the identity of the group, shaping their decisions, attitudes, and behaviors. A leader must also communicate vision through action. Words can inspire, but actions validate. When a leader's behavior reflects the vision, the message becomes believable. When their decisions align with the future they describe, the vision becomes tangible. When their sacrifices reflect their commitment, people respect the vision even more. Action gives credibility to the vision. Words alone create inspiration. Words supported by action create transformation. Another dimension of vision communication is adaptability. A leader must adjust how they express the vision, depending on who they are speaking to: teams, individuals, communities, partners, or followers. Different audiences need different emotional entry points. Some need hope, others need clarity. Some need direction, others need reassurance. Some need detail, others need simplicity. Adaptability ensures that the vision reaches people where they are emotionally and cognitively. A smart leader does not change the vision, but they adjust the way they communicate it.
Vision also requires transparency. People need to understand not only what the vision is, but why it matters. A leader must reveal the purpose behind the mission, the values behind the direction, and the meaning behind the goal. When people understand the why, the how becomes easier. Transparency deepens connection to the vision because it reveals the heart behind it. Vision communicated without transparency feels shallow. Vision communicated with transparency feels profound. Perhaps the most transformative element of vision communication is hope. Hope is not naive positivity. It is the belief that effort creates possibility, that change is worth pursuing, and that the future can be shaped by human determination. Hope is one of the strongest forms of emotional energy.
A leader who communicates hope gives people strength to endure difficulties, energy to overcome setbacks, and courage to move forward. Hope is the emotional engine behind vision. Without hope, vision fades. With hope, vision becomes unstoppable. At the core, communicating vision is an act of leadership that goes beyond speaking. It is about awakening something powerful within people: belief. Belief in themselves, belief in the mission, belief in the future, belief in the possibility of change. When people believe, they commit. When they commit, they act. When they act together, vision becomes reality. As this chapter concludes, remember that vision is the leader's greatest gift to others. It gives meaning to effort, direction to uncertainty, and unity to diversity. Communication is the bridge that carries vision from the leader's imagination into the hearts of those who will bring it to life. When you speak your vision with clarity, passion, authenticity, relevance, confidence, honesty, repetition, action, and hope, your words do more than describe a future. Your words create it.
Chapter 8. Strategic Conversations. How leaders guide dialogue, resolve tension, and influence through interaction. Leadership is not demonstrated only in speeches or formal presentations. It is most visible, most tested, and most influential in conversations. Conversations are where leadership breathes. They are where misunderstandings arise, where relationships are strengthened or weakened, where trust is earned or lost, where decisions take shape, and where influence reveals itself moment by moment. Strategic conversations are not about manipulation or clever arguments. They are about guiding dialogue in a way that creates clarity, alignment, progress, and understanding. Leadership communication is not a monologue. It is a dynamic exchange, and the leader's ability to navigate that exchange with intention, emotional intelligence, and strategic awareness determines the quality of their influence. Most people speak in conversations without thinking about their impact. They react impulsively, respond defensively, or speak merely to fill silence. Leaders, however, approach conversations with purpose. They understand that every interaction is an opportunity to inspire, to clarify, to correct, to strengthen, to build, or to resolve. They listen not just for words, but for needs, emotions, and motivations. They speak not to dominate the conversation, but to guide it. Their presence shapes the tone, direction, and outcome of the dialogue. A leader's conversation can transform confusion into understanding, conflict into cooperation, fear into confidence, and hesitation into commitment.
After listening, leaders guide conversations with clarity. They ask questions that uncover truth. They invite reflection instead of giving immediate judgment. They help others articulate their thoughts when confusion clouds their mind. They clarify expectations, roles, goals, and misunderstandings with calm, precise language. Clarity is a leadership gift. It brings order to emotional or cognitive chaos. Many conflicts arise from unclear communication, and many solutions begin with clear dialogue. Leaders understand this, and they use clarity as a tool to move conversations forward. Strategic conversations also require emotional patience. Leadership conversations often take place in difficult emotional environments. Stress, anger, frustration, disappointment, fear, insecurity, or confusion. A leader must be the emotional anchor in the conversation. They must remain steady when emotions rise. They must remain calm when others become defensive. They must remain compassionate when others feel vulnerable. Emotional patience allows a leader to guide the conversation without being pulled into the emotional turbulence of the moment. This stability makes the leader's voice a source of comfort and direction. One of the most powerful strategies in leadership conversations is the ability to steer without controlling. Leaders guide with gentle influence rather than force. They shape the direction of the conversation through thoughtful questions, reflective statements, and clear objectives. They do not impose their perspective. They guide others to discover clarity themselves. This creates ownership and empowerment. When people arrive at insights on their own, with the leader gently directing the path, they commit more deeply to the outcome. Strategic influence is subtle, respectful, and intelligent.
Another essential aspect of leadership conversations is the ability to address conflict without fear. Conflict is a natural part of human interaction. Leaders do not avoid conflict, they navigate it. They approach disagreements not as battles to win, but as misunderstandings to resolve. They know that behind every conflict lies a need, recognition, respect, clarity, fairness, or security. Leaders look for that need. They speak calmly when tensions rise. They listen more when emotions sharpen, and they respond with intention rather than impulse. They separate people from problems, focusing on solutions instead of assigning blame. Conflict becomes an opportunity for deeper understanding when handled strategically. Leaders also understand the importance of directness in conversations. Strategic communication does not mean avoiding difficult truths. Quite the opposite. Leaders speak the truth clearly, respectfully, and courageously. They deliver feedback without harshness and without hesitation. They address issues directly because avoidance creates greater conflict later. But they deliver truth with empathy, ensuring that honesty becomes a bridge, not a blade. Directness delivered with kindness creates trust. People may not always enjoy hearing the truth, but they respect leaders who speak it fairly. Another dimension of strategic conversations is the ability to manage silence. Many people rush to fill silence with unnecessary words, weakening their message. Leaders understand that silence is powerful. It gives space for reflection. It encourages others to think before reacting. It reduces emotional escalation. Silence after a powerful question gives the listener time to explore their own thoughts deeply. Silence after a strong statement allows the message to settle. Silence after tension allows emotions to calm. Leaders do not fear silence. They use it thoughtfully.
Strategic conversations also require presence. Presence means being fully engaged, mentally, emotionally, and physically. It means not being distracted by phones, thoughts, or external noise. It means giving the other person the gift of complete attention. Presence strengthens the emotional connection and amplifies the leader's influence. People open up in the presence of someone who is truly there with them. Presence transforms ordinary conversation into transformational communication. Vision also plays a role in strategic conversations. Leaders help others see the bigger picture. When people feel discouraged, leaders guide them back to purpose. When people feel lost, leaders help them reconnect with direction. When people feel confused, leaders show how their role fits into the larger mission. Strategic conversations align individual emotions and goals with collective vision. This alignment transforms personal motivation and strengthens unity. In strategic conversations, leaders also use language that creates collaboration. They avoid language that divides or blames. Instead of, "you failed," they say, "let's analyze what happened." Instead of, "you didn't do your part," they say, "how can we strengthen this process together?" Instead of, "this is your problem," they say, "we can find a way forward." Collaborative language widens the emotional space of the conversation. It removes defensiveness and builds trust. It shifts the mindset from conflict to cooperation. Leaders must also navigate conversations that involve resistance. Resistance is rarely about disagreement with the idea itself. It often reflects fear of change, fear of inadequacy, or loss of control. Leaders respond to resistance with curiosity rather than pressure. They explore the reasons behind the resistance. They validate the emotions involved. They address concerns with patience. Strategic leaders do not fight resistance. They transform it by understanding its roots.
Another element of strategic conversations is the ability to articulate boundaries. Leaders communicate expectations, not to control, but to create clarity. They express what behaviors are acceptable, what values guide the team, and what standards must be upheld. Boundaries create psychological safety. They prevent misunderstandings and protect the integrity of the leadership relationship. Leaders who communicate boundaries clearly prevent larger problems before they arise. Strategic conversations also involve empowerment. Leaders use conversations to build people, not weaken them. They help others discover their strengths, overcome self-doubt, and develop confidence. They ask questions that inspire reflection. What do you believe you're capable of? What part of this challenge excites you? What do you think your next step is? Empowering conversations transform followers into leaders, and leaders into mentors. Finally, strategic conversations reflect the leader's character. Every conversation reveals something about the leader, whether they are patient or reactive, respectful or dismissive, wise or impulsive. People remember how a leader made them feel in conversation, long after they forget specific words. Strategic leaders make people feel valued, understood, guided, and supported. Their voice becomes a source of emotional safety and intellectual clarity. As this chapter concludes, remember that leadership is not measured in speeches, but in moments, in small conversations, quiet exchanges, difficult dialogues, and everyday interactions. These are the spaces where influence is built and strengthened. Strategic conversations allow leaders to guide emotional energy, resolve tension, bring clarity, inspire growth, and create unity. They are not about controlling the conversation. They are about elevating it. When you master strategic conversations, you do more than communicate effectively. You transform relationships, strengthen teams, and extend your leadership into every corner of human interaction.
Chapter 9. Storytelling for Leaders. How Stories Shape Emotion, Inspire Action, and Build Human Connection. Stories are the oldest tool of leadership. Long before humans developed written language, systems of governance, or organized institutions, they gathered around fires and listened to stories. Stories of danger, survival, wisdom, courage, failure, victory, identity, and transformation. Stories were not entertainment. They were guidance, teaching, memory, and meaning. Even today, in a world saturated with information, technology, noise, and speed, storytelling remains one of the most powerful ways a leader can influence emotion, shape thought, and inspire action. People may forget instructions, details, or arguments, but they remember stories. They internalize them. They repeat them. They carry them into their lives. Leadership without storytelling is lifeless. Leadership with storytelling becomes unforgettable. At its core, storytelling is the art of turning ideas into human experience. Facts speak to the mind, but stories speak to the heart. Logic explains, but stories move. Information informs, but stories transform. A leader who understands the power of storytelling understands how human beings truly think, feel, and decide. Every belief people hold was shaped by a story, either one they lived, one they heard, or one they imagined. Leaders who want to shape beliefs must learn to shape stories. Leadership stories are not fictional narratives. They are emotional truths wrapped in relatable experience. They may come from the leader's own life, from the team's journey, from history, from observation, or from imagined scenarios that capture real human struggles. What matters is not the origin of the story, but its impact. A story must reveal something meaningful about the path ahead, the values that guide the mission, or the kind of strength required to achieve the goal. Stories give people a sense of identity. Who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe? What are we capable of? When a leader uses storytelling effectively, they give people a narrative that shapes their mindset, fuels their motivation, and strengthens their unity.
The most powerful leadership stories follow a simple psychological pattern: a challenge, a struggle, a decision, and a transformation. Human beings are naturally drawn to this pattern because it mirrors the structure of their own lives. Everyone faces challenges, everyone experiences struggle, everyone must make decisions, and everyone seeks transformation. When a leader tells a story that reflects these universal experiences, the listener feels emotionally connected to the message. They see themselves inside the narrative. They feel understood. And when they feel understood, they open their heart to the leader's guidance. But the leader's role in storytelling is not to impress, it is to connect. Some leaders believe they must tell stories that make them appear heroic or wise. But storytelling that elevates the leader above the listener weakens leadership. True leadership stories do not glorify the leader, they illuminate the path. They reveal vulnerability, growth, mistakes, learning, perseverance, and insight. People do not follow perfect leaders, they follow human leaders. Authentic stories, ones that show humility, honesty, and growth, create trust. They show that the leader is not speaking from a place of superiority, but from shared experience. A leader's vulnerability, expressed through storytelling, does not weaken authority, it strengthens connection. When a leader tells a story about a mistake they made, a challenge they faced, or a fear they had to overcome, listeners see courage in that honesty. They see themselves in the struggle. They feel inspired by the transformation. Vulnerability shows that the leader is real, not distant. It shows that success is possible even through imperfection. It gives people permission to grow, learn, and try. Vulnerability, when expressed through storytelling, becomes a powerful form of leadership.
Emotion is the heartbeat of storytelling. Facts might inform, but emotion inspires. Leaders who tell emotionally resonant stories create a powerful internal shift in the listener. A story that expresses courage awakens courage. A story that expresses hope awakens hope. A story that expresses resilience awakens resilience. The emotional energy of the story becomes the emotional energy of the listener. Humans are emotional mirrors. They absorb the feelings expressed to them. Leaders use this psychological truth responsibly, not to manipulate, but to motivate. To tell powerful stories, leaders must first observe life with awareness. Inspiration for leadership stories comes from everyday moments: a conversation, a small victory, a lesson learned, a challenge overcome, or an interaction that reveals a deeper truth. Life is filled with raw material for storytelling. The leader must gather these moments, reflect on them, find the meaning beneath them, and transform them into lessons. Leadership storytelling is the art of turning experience into wisdom. The language of storytelling is also important.
Stories must be told in simple, vivid, and relatable language. They must be easy to visualize. They must feel real. Visual words help listeners imagine the scene. Emotional words help them feel the journey. Leaders do not need complicated language. Simplicity carries more power. A story told simply becomes universal. A story told with unnecessary complexity loses emotional resonance. Leaders speak with clarity so the story lives in the listener's mind, not just in the leader's voice.
Leaders also understand the power of pacing in storytelling. They do not rush through the story because rushing weakens emotional impact. They guide the listener slowly through key moments, setting the scene, describing the challenge, expressing the emotion, revealing the decision, and showing the transformation. This pacing creates a rhythm that engages the listener's attention. It allows them to absorb the emotional experience. A well-told story creates suspense, empathy, insight, and ultimately, inspiration. But storytelling in leadership is not only about past experiences, it is also about future vision. Leaders tell stories about the future, stories about what the group can become, what the mission can achieve, what change can look like, and what success will feel like. These visionary stories turn goals into emotional journeys. They help people imagine themselves in the future, not as passive observers, but as active participants. Visionary storytelling is one of the most powerful leadership tools because it turns the future into something emotionally real. Leaders also use stories to create unity. A shared story becomes part of the group's identity. It becomes the narrative that brings people together, strengthens culture, and builds loyalty. Shared stories give people a sense of belonging and purpose. They remind teams of what they have overcome and what they are capable of achieving together. They reinforce values and celebrate commitment. When leaders use storytelling to unify, they strengthen the emotional foundation of the team. Storytelling is also a tool for teaching without lecturing. When a leader tells a story with a moral or lesson, the listener internalizes the message through experience rather than instruction. Stories bypass resistance. People may reject advice, but they rarely reject stories. A good story invites reflection rather than forcing obedience. It allows the listener to draw conclusions without feeling pressured. This makes storytelling one of the most respectful and effective tools for influence.
Another powerful dimension of leadership storytelling is perspective. Leaders use stories to help people shift their view of challenges, failures, or setbacks. A story about how someone turned a failure into growth can change the listener's perception of failure. A story about resilience can reframe a difficult moment. A story about courage can spark bravery. Perspective-shifting stories transform the emotional meaning of experiences. They help people reinterpret their struggles in empowering ways. Leaders also understand that storytelling is not limited to formal settings. The most influential stories often appear in casual conversations, team meetings, mentoring moments, or one-on-one discussions. A story told at the right moment can change someone's mindset instantly. Leadership stories do not need a stage. They need intention. Finally, great leaders understand that storytelling is not about them. It is about the people they serve. A leadership story must always aim to uplift, guide, unite, or inspire others. It must reveal deeper truths, awaken deeper strength, and illuminate deeper meaning. The leader is not the hero of the story. The people are. The mission is. The future is. The story is a vehicle of transformation. As this chapter concludes, remember that stories are the emotional currency of leadership. They are not decoration, they are the essence of influence. A leader who masters storytelling gains the ability to shape belief, inspire action, teach wisdom, strengthen unity, and create a sense of meaning that lasts. When you speak with stories, your leadership becomes human, relatable, memorable, and timeless. Stories are how leaders leave their mark, not just on minds, but on hearts.
Another powerful dimension of leadership storytelling is perspective. Leaders use stories to help people shift their view of challenges, failures, or setbacks. A story about how someone turned a failure into growth can change the listener's perception of failure. A story about resilience can reframe a difficult moment. A story about courage can spark bravery. Perspective-shifting stories transform the emotional meaning of experiences. They help people reinterpret their struggles in empowering ways. Leaders also understand that storytelling is not limited to formal settings. The most influential stories often appear in casual conversations, team meetings, mentoring moments, or one-on-one discussions. A story told at the right moment can change someone's mindset instantly. Leadership stories do not need a stage, they need intention. Finally, great leaders understand that storytelling is not about them, it is about the people they serve. A leadership story must always aim to uplift, guide, unite, or inspire others. It must reveal deeper truths, awaken deeper strength, and illuminate deeper meaning. The leader is not the hero of the story. The people are. The mission is. The future is. The story is a vehicle of transformation. As this chapter concludes, remember that stories are the emotional currency of leadership. They are not decoration, they are the essence of influence. A leader who masters storytelling gains the ability to shape belief, inspire action, teach wisdom, strengthen unity, and create a sense of meaning that lasts. When you speak with stories, your leadership becomes human, relatable, memorable, and timeless. Stories are how leaders leave their mark, not just on minds, but on hearts. Facial expression is another window into leadership presence. A tense, hardened, or expressionless face creates emotional distance. A worried or fearful expression creates doubt. But a calm, composed, and emotionally attuned expression creates a sense of safety. Leaders use their facial expressions intentionally. They soften their eyes to show empathy, lift their expression to show encouragement, relax their jaw to show calmness, and align their face with the emotional energy they wish to project. People feel a leader's emotional state through their facial expression before they process a single word. Breathing is the invisible engine beneath nonverbal communication. Breath shapes tone, pace, posture, and emotional stability. Shallow, rapid breathing communicates stress or anxiety, even if the leader's words sound calm. Slow, deep, controlled breathing communicates confidence. It stabilizes the voice, calms the mind, and regulates emotions. Leaders who master their breath can speak with clarity even in moments of pressure. Breath becomes a tool for leadership presence, anchoring the body and mind. When the leader breathes well, they communicate well. Breath is the foundation of composure. The energy behind the body is equally important. Energy is not visible, but it is felt. People sense when a leader's presence is heavy with stress, scattered with distraction, or empty of engagement. They also sense when a leader's presence is vibrant, grounded, and focused. This energy comes from inner alignment, clarity of purpose, emotional stability, and mental presence. Leaders must enter conversations, meetings, and interactions with centered energy.
When their inner energy is calm and aligned, their nonverbal signals harmonize naturally. People feel safe, understood, and guided by this energy.
Nonverbal presence is also shaped by boundaries. Leaders project boundaries through posture, eye contact, personal space, and physical orientation. Boundaries do not create distance, they create respect. They communicate that the leader understands their role, values their space, and carries themselves with dignity. When boundaries are weak, people may feel uncertain or confused about the leader's authority. When boundaries are strong but respectful, people feel guided and protected. A leader's body language must reflect healthy boundaries, not rigid walls, but clear structure. Distance and proximity also play a role in nonverbal leadership communication. Leaders who stand too far may seem cold or detached. Those who stand too close may seem intrusive or overwhelming. The correct distance varies by culture and context, but emotionally intelligent leaders adapt intuitively. They maintain a comfortable space that allows openness without discomfort. They position themselves in ways that enhance connection rather than diminish it. One of the most powerful aspects of nonverbal leadership presence is alignment. Alignment means the body matches the message. When a leader speaks of calmness, but their posture is tense, people feel tension. When a leader speaks of confidence, but their eyes look uncertain, people feel uncertainty. But when the leader's body, tone, expression, and message align, the communication becomes powerful. The listener feels the truth of the message, not only intellectually, but emotionally. Alignment creates authenticity, and authenticity creates influence.
Leaders also use nonverbal communication to create emotional atmospheres. When they enter a room with steady posture, calm breath, warm eye contact, and composed movement, the room becomes calmer. When they enter with open gestures, relaxed shoulders, and a centered presence, the room becomes more trusting. The leader's physical presence acts as an emotional stabilizer or amplifier. People unconsciously mirror the leader's state. A leader must therefore choose their nonverbal energy consciously, not for performance, but for impact. Nonverbal communication is equally important in moments of silence. A leader's silence can feel like judgment, hesitation, reflection, or strength, depending on their body language. Silence paired with calm eye contact and steady posture communicates reflection and intention. Silence paired with tension communicates discomfort or uncertainty. Leaders must master silent presence, the ability to communicate confidence without words. Another essential part of leadership presence is the ability to remain non-reactive. When others are angry, anxious, or emotional, the nonverbal presence of the leader must remain steady. People trust leaders who do not lose control of their physical presence under pressure. Non-reactive presence communicates emotional intelligence. It says, I am here, I am stable, I am listening, I am not threatened, I am capable of guiding this moment.
Finally, nonverbal presence is not something a leader puts on only during important moments. It is a habit, a discipline, a way of being. True leadership presence comes from inner alignment, not from external performance. It comes from confidence, emotional stability, self-awareness, purpose, and integrity. When the inner world is strong, the outer presence follows naturally. As this chapter concludes, remember that your body speaks before your mouth does. People judge leadership not only by what you say, but by how you show up. Presence is the silent language of leadership. It is the energy, posture, movement, breath, and expression that shape how others feel around you. When your nonverbal presence radiates calmness, clarity, confidence, and authenticity, your words gain power. People trust you more deeply. They listen more attentively. They follow more willingly. Leadership is embodied long before it is spoken, and mastering nonverbal presence will make your voice, your influence, and your leadership unforgettable.
Conclusion. Your voice is your legacy. Leadership begins with a voice, but it does not end with words. The journey you have taken through this book is not only a journey of communication, it is a journey of identity, awareness, purpose, and influence. You have explored the inner confidence that forms the foundation of leadership, the tone that shapes your emotional presence, the language that builds trust, the vision that inspires belief, the stories that move hearts, the strategic conversations that resolve tension, and the nonverbal communication that speaks before words ever do. By now, it should be clear that speaking like a leader is not an act. It is an evolution. It is not a performance. It is a transformation. It is not about mastering techniques alone, but about mastering yourself. A leader's voice is not simply the sound that comes from their mouth. It is the expression of their inner world. When your thoughts are clear, your words become clear. When your emotions are steady, your tone becomes steady. When your purpose is strong, your communication becomes strong. When your identity is aligned, your presence becomes powerful. Communication is the bridge between your inner self and the world outside, and leadership is the art of crossing that bridge with conviction. Speaking like a leader does not mean you always have the perfect answer or the perfect sentence. It means you speak with intention even when you are uncertain. It means you speak with honesty even when the truth is difficult. It means you speak with respect even when you are challenged. It means you speak with purpose even when the path ahead is unclear. It means you speak with courage even when fear whispers in the background. Leadership is not the absence of doubt. It is the ability to communicate through doubt with calmness, clarity, and belief.
As you reflect on the chapters behind you, remember that every part of communication matters. Your tone shapes emotion. Your pace shapes perception. Your eye contact shapes connection. Your stories shape meaning. Your silence shapes presence. Your language shapes identity. Your confidence shapes trust. Your vision shapes the future. The leader's voice is a symphony of all these elements, each one contributing to the emotional impact you have on others. You are not learning to sound like someone else. You are learning to reveal the strongest version of yourself. True leadership communication is an act of service. It is not about showing power, but giving strength. It is not about impressing others, but elevating them. It is not about being the loudest voice in the room, but being the clearest, the calmest, and the most purposeful. People follow leaders because they feel guided, respected, understood, and inspired. They follow voices that bring clarity when life is confusing, stability when life is chaotic, vision when life is directionless, and courage when life is challenging. Your voice can be that voice. No matter where you are in your journey, the power to speak like a leader is already inside you. It does not come from age, position, background, or status. It comes from awareness, practice, intention, and sincerity. Every conversation is an opportunity to grow. Every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen your presence. Every interaction is an opportunity to express your values. Every moment is an opportunity to lead with your voice. Leadership is not something you wait for. It is something you practice.
Speaking like a leader is not the final destination of your growth. It is the beginning. As your voice evolves, so will your influence. As your influence grows, so will your impact. As your impact expands, so will the lives you touch. Leadership communication is a lifelong journey, one that deepens with experience, reflection, and purpose. You will refine your tone,
Adapt your language, expand your emotional intelligence, and strengthen your presence over time. You will make mistakes and learn from them. You will face challenges that test your voice. But each step will bring you closer to the communicator, the leader, and the person you are meant to become. Your voice is your legacy. It will shape the way others remember you, the way they trust you, the way they follow you, and the way they grow because of you. The words you speak today can influence the decisions of tomorrow. The calmness you offer in difficult moments can become someone's source of strength. The clarity you bring to confusion can become someone's guide. The hope you communicate through vision can become someone's foundation. Your leadership voice will live beyond the moments in which it is spoken. As you close this book, remember that leadership is not granted, it is expressed. It is not assigned, it is earned. And it is earned not through authority, but through communication. Let your voice be the voice that brings trust, wisdom, strength, empathy, and purpose into the world. Let your communication be the bridge that connects ideas to action, people to possibility, and fear to courage. Let your presence speak before you do. Let your words build what cannot be seen. Let your tone carry the weight of your values. Let your silence hold meaning. Let your stories ignite imagination. Let your conversations create unity. Let your leadership live through your voice.